Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi wa kafa wa salamun ala ibadihi alladhina istafa wa qad qala Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala fi Qur'an al-Kareem ba'da a'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Wa laqad yassarna al-Qur'ana lidh-dhikri fahal min muddakir. Wa qala an-nabiy sallallahu alayhi wa sallam khayrukum man ta'allama al-Qur'ana wa 'allamahu aw kama qala alayhi salatu wassalam. Amma ba'd. It is from the kindness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that in every era, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's gaze of protection, when it falls, it allows a certain group of individuals, a certain group of people, whether it's men, whether it's women, whether it's children, to come under a certain atmosphere of protection. Because of this atmosphere of protection, they begin to see the world differently from those who are not in this atmosphere. So they behave differently from the way others behave. They're blessed with children, they're blessed with families, they're blessed with friends who behave differently from everyone else in the world, how they behave. And those who come under the protection of Islam inside this atmosphere, they'll look outside at those who are not inside this protection, and they will never understand why people they do shirk, why people they do kufr. For them that would be something so far-fetched and so absurd. And those who are not in this protection, if they try to look inside and what's going on inside, they can never understand why these people choose to follow Islam. They don't understand why they don't choose atheism, Satanism. From outside, the inside doesn't look right. And from the inside, the outside doesn't look right. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's gaze of protection, when it falls harder, more stronger, then suddenly that family, it's becoming pious. Now when that family looks outside, that family cannot understand how a person can live their life so far away from the Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, from following the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, from the life of Islam. And the one who's outside, when he looks inside, he can't understand how that person's family, how their everything is so pious. Now when that protective atmosphere falls on children, you'll see a group of children who their fathers and their grandfathers might have not been from the best of families. But those children are so good and so well-mannered, and these children are such stars in the community that even parents, other parents looking at them, they'll begin to think, how did they ever manage to get made in this era? And children from outside, they'll look at those children from the inside and they'll say, impossible. What kind of life are they living? You know, they're probably not enjoying their life the way we're enjoying our life. So this whole bayan today, inshallah, that's going to be given is going to be on this. That how we make sure we start begging Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to enter into this atmosphere of protection, and that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala never pushes us outside of that atmosphere. Because school is starting, and school children are going to school soon. It's the same time where generally the maktab starts, the after-school program. So this bayan will be sort of centered around the importance of the maktab program or the after-school program. There's 3 points today I wish to share with everyone present here. And these 3 points are the foundation of our deen. Our first responsibility, we have 3 responsibilities. Our first responsibility is that we have to ensure that we teach deen to our children. And teaching deen to our children, most importantly, we have to teach them the Quran. The Quran is the lifeline of every single Muslim male, Muslim female, Muslim adult, Muslim child. We have to create a culture of memorizing the Quran. We have to create a culture of understanding the Quran. We have to create a culture of acting upon the Quran. Unfortunately, what's happening today, it's becoming very common that if my child, he's not a hafidh of the Quran, if my child is not an absolute expert of the Quran, if I'm not an absolute expert of the Quran, then that means we leave the Quran completely 100%. But we don't do that in any other field. We don't say that if we don't become a millionaire, then there's no point in working at all. We understand the value of if we don't get it all, at least we should try to get something. If you see other nations and other cultures, especially if you go to Egypt, for example, every single person there, whether he's a taxi driver, whether he's a doctor, whether he's a lawyer, whether he's an engineer, every single person is an expert of the Quran. The taxi driver will be reciting better than some of the Qurra in America. If you go to Turkey, subhanAllah, the president of the country is Hafidh of Quran. If anybody ever Googled or YouTube a video of him reciting Quran, he recites very beautifully. So this culture, unfortunately, is a culture that we don't have today. Our culture should be that everybody can't become a Hafidh, everybody can't become an alim, everybody can't become a scholar. It's not meant for everybody to become a scholar. But that doesn't mean we become the most qualified in our respective positions. We become the highest doctor on the board. We become the highest engineer. We become the highest architect. But then at the same time, in Deen, in dunya, we reach the highest pinnacles we could possibly reach. But then if we look at our Deen, if we look at how well versed we are with the Quran, if we look at how comfortable our relationship is with the Quran, how much of the Quran do we understand, it shouldn't be that we don't have a relationship with the Quran. So if we're not feeling comfortable with the Quran, if we are having trouble reciting the Quran, if we are struggling to memorize a few surahs of the Quran, my message here today for every single one of us, that this trend that we might have seen growing up, this trend that we might have seen in our own lives, in the lives of our families, in the lives of our friends, this should not be the trend of the future generation. This should not be the trend of our next generation. This should not be the trend of our younger brothers and sisters. This should not be the trend of our children who are to come. If we are not comfortable with the relationship we have with the Quran, the least we can do is to ensure for our next generation that they are comfortable with the Quran. They are comfortable reciting the Quran whichever time of the day. They are comfortable with the meaning of the Quran. They are comfortable with the message of the Quran. So this is our first responsibility, each and every single one of us here. We have to teach our children, we have to teach our family members the Deen. But then it doesn't stop there. Teaching the Deen is not enough. Teaching the Deen is not enough. The second step, we have to go one step over and above. We have to make sure not only do they learn the Deen, we have to make sure that they are also practicing upon the Deen. And in today's environment in America, we are not living in the golden age of Islam. We are not living in an Islamic country where the adhan is being played on loudspeakers. Every single salah, you can hear 4 masajid. If you visit the beautiful country of Turkey, you'll hear one adhan go off. Right after that, you'll hear another adhan go off. Beautiful adhan, beautiful masajid. There's no visible culture of Islam like how there is in Islamic countries. If you go to the Haram, if you go to Mecca and Medina, the way everybody just stops everything they're doing to go for salah, we don't have that here. Our children, our curriculums are not Islamic. And they're not promoting Islam. They're promoting the opposite of Islam. They're promoting secularism. They're promoting modernism. The subjects that we're learning, they're not Islamic. Most of our teachers, they're not Muslims. Most of our friends, they're not Muslims. And even if some of our friends are Muslims, most likely or not, they're in the same boat as everyone else. Let me illustrate this with a beautiful example. You have an atheist child. If that children are not atheists, but the parents, they make them. You have a child who, he doesn't know what's going on, but he subscribes and he says that I myself am an atheist. This child, he will go to a Muslim school that offers quality education in the formative years of his life. For the first 12 years, elementary school, middle school, and then high school. After those 12 years of high school, middle school, and elementary school, if that atheist child, he says that I wish to decide to become Muslim, will anybody in the community be shocked? Will they be surprised? They will say, no, that's obviously what's going to happen. Because he's been in that environment, he sees how Muslims are, he sees the beautiful religion of Islam. How can he not become a Muslim after that entire experience? So then we have to think ourselves that when we have our children, we're placing our children in these public schools. For elementary school, we're placing our children in the middle schools. We're placing our children in the high schools. These are secular schools, not religious schools. So after a child is spending his entire life, his formative years inside that environment, why should it shock us and why should we be surprised that when he goes to college and university, he decides to leave everything, he decides to leave Islam, he decides to renounce his faith and not believe in the kalima la ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. Similarly, the way we're not shocked there, we shouldn't be shocked here. Why? Because we weren't giving them the proper environment to grow up in. We weren't giving the proper Islamic nourishment. We weren't nourishing them according to the Quran and Sunnah. We weren't giving them the teachings of Islam. We weren't acting upon Islam ourselves. We have to make them learn Deen. That's not enough. We have to make them practice upon Deen. We know that the environment is not going to help us. The main maktab, the main seat of learning a child has when he grows up is the seat of his mother and his father. If a child, he doesn't see his mother and father giving importance to the Deen, if the child, he doesn't see his mother and father keeping fast, if the child doesn't see his mother and father reciting Quran, praying Salah, giving charity, spending extra time over and above to promote Islam, then that children, you can't fool children. Children can see right through everyone. But kids do get affected. Alhamdulillah, for the past year, I was part of the Hifz program teaching children. I was part of the afternoon Maktab program teaching younger children. I was part of the Alim course teaching the high school children, teaching the university level children. For the past year, I was only interacting with children. I'm not claiming to be an expert on child psychology or anything like that. But I'm saying that if your house is on fire, you don't need a firefighter to come and tell you that your house is going to burn down. You have to evacuate. Today, the problem is nobody ever thinks that my house is the one that's going to catch on fire. Today, nobody ever thinks that I'm going to get into the accident. Today, nobody's thinking that it's going to be my family, it's going to be my children, it's going to be my wife, it's going to be my husband, it's going to be my daughter, it's going to be my son, it's going to be my father, it's going to be my mother. Nobody's thinking that it can happen to me. Everybody thinks today, instead, they think that, alhamdulillah, I learned enough, and the problems and the kufr and the systematic propagation of this kufr, it's not going to affect me today. But this was not the way of the Sahaba radiallahu ta'ala alayhim ajma'in. Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, Umar radiallahu anhu, all the Sahaba, they used to be concerned every single day. Am I going to die with Iman? Am I going to die with the kalima la ilaha illallah? Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he says a person, he'll be a Muslim in the beginning of the day, by the evening he won't become Muslim. There's going to be a time where a person, he's going to be a Muslim in the evening, and then when he wakes up, he won't become a Muslim, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will take away his faith. Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu used to say that I wish I was a blade of grass, because he was so fearful of the reckoning on the day of Qiyamah. He didn't know if he would have Iman and die. But today we have become so complacent, unfortunately so lackadaisical, each and every single one of them, myself first and foremost, and we think that we're safe. But we should always be careful and cognizant about our Iman. And the solution, I don't want to just criticize and not give a solution. Where is that one place where you can keep a child safe from all of these efforts of kufr? You need a protected place, you need a sanctuary, you need a kahf, a cave, where those youngsters in the Quran, as it mentioned in Surah Kahf, to protect their Iman, they left their city so that they can go inside a cave and protect their Iman. What is that cave that will protect our Iman today, 2019, in America? That place is the Masjid. That place is the masjid. Today all of us are feeling comfortable to come to the masjid. But tell that child, ask that child if he'll feel comfortable to the masjid. If that connection with the masjid is not cultivated and fostered and nurtured early on in that child's life, then the same way, for example, we don't feel comfortable if we're going inside a bar. We don't feel comfortable walking into a club. We feel like a fish out of water. We don't belong there. Then if our children are not connected with the masjid from a very early age, then we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protection. It should not be that when he grows up, he also feels shy to come to the masjid. He also feels shy to connect himself to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He also feels shy to identify as Muslim. It should not be like that. If there's no connection to the masjid, then there's probably no connection to the ulama, the scholars. But the importance of the scholars we can't undermine. The scholar is there when the child is born. He's there giving adhan in the child's ear. He's there when the child is doing aqiqah. When the child, he's learning to read the Quran, the alim is there. When the child finishes reading the Quran, the alim is there. When the child is going through maktab, the alim is there. When the child is going through school, he needs some counseling, the alim is there. When the child grows up, he's having problems reconciling his faith with the kufr, the alim is there to answer his questions. When the child grows up, he gets married, the alim is there to perform his nikah. When the child grows up, he has marital issues, the alim is there to counsel him on how to resolve those issues. When he himself has children, the alim is there to repeat the entire process. And when that person, he passes away and he has to perform janazah, the alim is there also to perform the janazah. So connecting the child to the masjid is our main priority. And then as extension, the child is connected to the alim. You might say, we don't see any change going on when the child comes to the masjid. But then when the world is telling you 24/7, you go to your job, everybody's talking about dunya. You go to your school, everybody's talking about dunya. You go home, your family's talking about dunya. You go on the internet, you go on your phone, everything is talking about dunya. The masjid will scream and the masjid will say, I am that one thing in this world, in this dunya. I will be the one that's going to remind you of the akhirah. 24/7 you're being reminded of the dunya, but I am that one thing who will remind you about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who will remind you about Quran, who will remind you that this is not the true life, this is not your only life. You have a life to live after you pass away. That's the real life. So we need a place that will transform and change the psyche of the child, because he is also being bombarded by, his family, his friends, his school. He's also experiencing the same difficulty. Have we ever asked a child how he's, what he thinks about Islam, what he thinks about his religion? We should try to ask our children. We should speak with them. We should have these discussions, these conversations. So by enrolling a child in this maktab program, all of these sort of prerequisites will be fulfilled. He'll be connected with the masjid. He'll be connected with an alim. That was number 2. First thing was we have to teach our children the deen. Second thing is, teaching is not enough. We have to make them practice upon the deen. But then even practicing upon the deen is not enough. Not only do we have to make them practice upon the deen, we have to make sure that they love the deen. We have to create the love of Islam in their hearts. Because a person can practice, but he could be forced. He might not like doing it. So the maktabs can do this to an extent. The alim, he could encourage this child to an extent. But in reality, the main burden, the main responsibility of this falls with the family. It is the family's responsibility to cultivate that Islamic environment within the homes. Simple ways to do this. We buy the children the best gifts that they can possibly wish for on the day of Eid. We shouldn't buy them what they were wishing for the entire year on their birthday. No, you should buy them the most expensive, priceless gifts on the day of Eid. Why? Because then that child growing up, he will mentally and psychologically look forward to that day. And he will say, the day of Eid. And that Eid has an Islamic connotation. He will automatically associate that with Islam. So his entire life, and as he's growing up, he'll look forward to the day of Eid. And then he will always mention to his children, my parents used to buy me the best gifts. I will also buy my children the best gifts on the day of Eid. You make it an Islamic culture. When he memorizes a surah, you encourage him, you buy him a gift. When he completes his first fast, you buy him a gift. When he starts praying salah, you buy him a gift. It shouldn't be that when he gets an A+, 100% on his math exam or his reading exam, you buy him all the gifts. But then when he memorizes Surah Al-Fatiha, mashallah, good job, pat on the back, and only a hug. No, you should buy him, you should encourage and foster this relationship with the Quran. And children, they understand. They also understand what the parents, they value. If a person, he memorizes Surah Duha, memorizes Surah Al-Fatiha, and then he's not getting anything, but he's working very hard for his exam, and he gets a math exam, 100%, and that's when he gets his laptop, that's when he gets a brand new phone. Children aren't stupid. Children understand the difference. He knows where parents, they place their importance. So this is a family effort. So I would like to conclude with this, that these makatib, these after-school programs, these are places where seeds are planted within the community. And just like any tree, for example, you take the trees that are planted and used for manufacturing paper. That person who's planting the tree, he's probably never going to see the tree fully mature. That's why things like this, it takes 30, 40 years for a tree to fully mature. That's why projects like this are usually taken by the government. The same way a person, he's 40 years old, he makes an investment, he's only going to see the investment 30, 40 years later, 401k. So we do see the fruits of these maktabs, we do see the immediate fruits. MashaAllah, my child is learning how to read Quran, he's learning the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ, he's learning about the Sahaba radiallahu ta'ala alayhim ajma'in. He has the Islamic identity going on, but the real fruits would appear when we all pass away. These are our future leaders. These are the children. Our children are the one who will lead the next generation. And if we don't equip our children with the proper tools, if we don't equip them with the proper iman, the proper understanding of deen, according to the Quran and Sunnah, if we don't encourage them, and if we don't make them realize who they are, then there's no guarantee for the security of our future. And our goal, to finish off, there isn't a speck of doubt that Islam is going to spread across the entire world. There are clear signs that Islam is spreading across the globe like wildfire. Apart from all the media, apart from all the Islamophobia, Islam still remains and will be the fastest growing religion on the face of this earth. It was and it will be, because the truth is attractive. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make people always come to the truth. So our goal is how every single child, he can preserve their religion, how every single child can preserve their deen, how every single child can preserve their identity, how every single child can learn how to read the Quran, and how every single child can learn how to preserve their iman. And this is not only a Dawah Salam thing, it is our responsibility, whichever respective community we belong to. All the masajid have to get together to ensure and try to get every single child in the community enrolled in one of these after-school maktab programs. Because we can't be giving so much attention to the dunya and giving no attention to the akhirah. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect our iman, to protect the iman of our children and our families, and to protect the iman of every subsequent generation that is to follow. For more details about the maktab program that we offer here at Dar es-Salaam, please contact me or contact the office. Jazakumullahu Khairun. We can start praying our sunnah. Subhanallah bihamdihi, subhanakallahumma bihamdik, nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilaik.